The work you're doing is fantastic in police and in mental health, and I just wanted to acknowledge that. And so Amy is a constable project manager. She's with the Breakthrough Wellness team at the York Regional Police, just north of us, up in Canada. And honestly, with everything that you're involved in law enforcement, but also mental health and wellness for first responders, I'd love to get your perspective, and then please ask a question to one of our speakers.
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. And really enjoying these presentations. Super fascinated by all of this research. I really enjoyed the fact that you were saying that different cultures have different types of awe. So it's been well referenced that organization climate often determines what behaviors are appropriate and therefore likely to be used by police when dealing with a stressful or emotionally charged situation. It's also been referenced that police culture inhibits expression of emotion. I just want to bring up, there was another research study that I had read from the Australian psychologist on being mindful, emotionally aware, and more resilient. It was a longitudinal study that they did on police recruits. And what they found was that maladaptive coping, so especially avoidance, was socialized among a sample of recruit training. So they found that police officers became more emotionally detached or hardened within the first 18 months of police service. So they're at greater risk of becoming unsentimental, detached, cynical, or blocking out emotions. So while blocking emotions or detaching from emotions is potentially protective when you're in a crisis moment, the thing is we come back and then we have our workplace interactions, personal relationships, and also while we're engaging with the community, that's not beneficial. So avoiding or suppressing emotions has been linked to poor mental health. So in this particular study, they had introduced mindfulness and emotional awareness interventions through workshops, which showed that it was linked to improved mental health, well-being, and personal effectiveness. So in relationship to the research that you're talking about, how it's a skill and it's learned, it's developed, it can be cultivated. You mentioned that emotions emerge from language, memory, and affect and changing contexts through different situations throughout a person's lifetime through these repeated use of, through the use within a particular culture. You also mentioned that it can be shaped by values, norms, and different belief systems that are deemed important to that culture. So I'm just, within that aspect, and thinking about how being a police officer within the context of being in a police culture, a lot of police organizations right now are looking at focusing on well-being and policing and how to improve resiliency. And some of the three areas they're really focusing on are police culture, mental health, diversity, equity, and inclusion. So I'm just wondering from your research, how do we draw on these awe emotions to, so it's kind of loaded. So first is to disrupt the role of stigma and bias in preventing social inclusion, because we know that awe feelings can create that interconnectedness. The second thing is also, how would we enhance our communication around the nature of police work, because it can be super stressful and we're exposed to all these traumatic incidences. So I just want to hear your take on what we can do, not even just with the policing community, but as frontline workers, even in the healthcare system.
That's quite a lot. But,
sorry.
But yeah, so I'm going to say something that's a little bit contrarian to a lot of the stuff that you've heard over the last day and a half. But I don't think necessarily assuming, for example, that people are going to go out in nature and experience awe is necessarily helpful. What I suggest is understanding where people are coming from. Like, people can experience awe in nature, but they can experience it in a variety of contexts, and meeting them in their own terms, meeting them knowing, kind of understanding where they're coming from, what are their beliefs, what are their values, what are their histories, what are their interests. If you have someone that's a religious individual, well, go to church with them and cultivate that awe in their religious rituals and work with that. If you got someone that is into comic books or gaming, try to find ways to cultivate the good emotions through those activities, going to comic book conventions, going to organizing a comic book club, or like that kind of stuff. So thinking in terms of where people are and where to and where they can cultivate their emotions considering where they are. I think it's kind of the first step towards getting people to cultivate those emotions and cultivate positive emotions in that sense. So so yeah, that's kind of my couple cents of that I can contribute to this conversation, is trying to think more holistically in not just like assume from the start that, oh, we just take them out of nature and the nature will work, because that doesn't necessarily work for everyone. Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you, Daniel. And I think the only thing I'll add to that from I don't think it's really contrary to anything we heard. I think it's really very much in line, either way I look at it, with everything, because there is no one quick fix, especially something as toxic as some parts of police culture or any first responder or any cultures. It's very complex. And I think therefore the approach to try to counter that and remove it has to be equally, if not more complex. And everything that you even mentioned in that quick rundown of the different options aside of awe, right? Because awe won't fix everything. Like, let's be realistic, as important as it is. But you mentioned all things that are hardcore resilience, like having hobbies, spirituality and faith, and going to church if that's for you, or and then going to events and that social connectedness.